Alright, you bastards, this is Some-Belgian-prepper, and I got a tent in my living room. You would wonder, why would you have a tent in your living room, and why is this on a survival information channel? Well, I'm going to explain you why, but first, if you're interested in survival courses in Belgium, there will be a link to my website survivaltrainingbelgië.be for survival courses in Belgium, and also to a link to my book called Bloody Crosses. It's in Dutch, it's a detective, so if you're interested, take a look, I would say. So, a tent in your living room. What could be the point of this? Well, that is actually something that you can do during winter time when it's freezing and there is a power outage, blackout, or whatever for a very long time. I'm talking about the time that the time is longer perhaps than you have fuel in storage to heat up your house. We're talking about electricity. Perhaps you have a wood stove, perhaps you have a pellet stove like me here, and yeah, or some war situation where fuel or an electricity is been in rationed. So a tent could be a very good idea when it's freezing cold and over a longer period of time, because you don't have the means or the fuel or whatever you have to heat up your house is not available, and now the cold is getting inside of the house, is getting through the walls, so to say, because there is nothing in there to keep it outside. So after a long period of time, it doesn't matter how well isolated your house is, there will be a point where the freezing temperatures will be getting through the walls, etc., and getting inside of the house. So that is where the tent comes in. That is just my regular hiking tent. So the point of the tent is that you place it in perhaps the one room that you can have something small to heat up. Whether it's like here you have a pellet stove, or perhaps a terracotta pot warmer with tea light candles, or whatever small source you have. It is one room. Usually it would be the living room where you could with warm where you have one perhaps thing that you can warm up, and even if you don't, you got to choose one central room in the house to put your tent, and the tent will be used as protection against the cold that is getting inside, and it is for of course for sleeping. Perhaps you can bring your time within, and the tent is more for if you're with one or two with two persons or more, or with small children, to make use of the body heat to get inside. But there are several things that you need to watch out for, because that could be dangerous. First thing is, if you have a tent that is fully enclosed, you got to be careful for monoxide poisoning, because if one or two persons or even three persons in a tent starts breathing in and out all night long in a closed off space, and there is no ventilation inside, that could get dangerous. That's also the point is, if you can see, there is some woolen blankets around my tent. First of all, this is to get an extra layer that the cold breaks, because that is just the plastic of the tent. So if you put woolen blankets around it, that will be better to to separate a cold front from outside the tent in your room and keep heat inside the tent. But you got to be careful that it's something like cotton or wool. Why? Because for the same thing, you don't want monoxide poisoning that will keep lingering inside, because this is one of those tents that the top side can be taken off to as a ventilation for summertime and whatever, but the problem is heat can escape through that, and you want to keep the heat as much inside, because heat goes up, so most of the heat will gather around here. So that's the reason why here on the top I have a woolen blanket. I also have my shamaka around it, and another thing is that it can take in moist, because from breathing out, sweating, whatever, it also rises, and it will be in the ventilation holes, get taken up inside of the woolen blanket without losing its insulation value. Because like I always say, wool retains 80% of its isolation even when it's soaking wet. So when it gets damp in here, the wool can pull it out and retain its insulation and heat, so to say. So that's the reason why you have this setup right here. And yeah, just inside I would say, of course, to prevent a cold bridge from the floor, of course, I don't know if you can see it in the dark, of course you put your isolation pad inside of it, perhaps some sheepskin if you can see it. There is also a sheepskin, and to keep me warm I will test out the Wooby, and the Wooby I will make a future video about it, but it is just a small way to improvise when there is a long time freeze cold that you cannot warm up the house, and you can keep yourself and your family warm in this way. And yeah, just a small trick to keep you warm when times are getting very desperate. It maybe looks stupid to have a tent inside of your living room, but when it comes to survival, if it works, it's not really that stupid. So another thing I would say is, if you have one space that can heat up the room, like you can see, I have my pellet stove right in front of the opening of the tent. So that way, when the stove is working with the little fuel, because now it's running on its lowest with the pellets, the heat can reflect inside of it, and it can keep some of the heat. And when the time comes to put the stove off and go to sleep, you can close up the tent and keep that heat inside. You can also use perhaps an emergency blanket, but like I said, I would advise to make sure that if you're using an isolation blanket and you put it around it, that you at least keep something open, like the mosquito net of a tent, to at least get some air circulation inside of it, because the heat will get trapped inside of it better, but at the cost of getting damp, and when it's getting damp it can become a cold front in that way. So this is just a small idea that I picked up, and I must say, if you are surviving through a snowstorm, blackout during winter time, this is one way to do it if you don't have the means to warm up the house or a full room. So yeah, if you get any other ideas to do about this, or if you have experience with these kind of things, please let me know in the comments. I'm always eager to learn. Like, subscribe, all that good stuff, and see you in the next video. Cheers!